Hello and welcome to our workshop today. I hope everyone has enjoyed your holiday, spent some time with family, and had a moment to reflect on what we have to be grateful and thankful for. Today we are going to talk about bugs and like Today we're going to talk about bugs and we're going to talk about the pests as well as beneficial insects and bugs that can be found in our garden. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up the PowerPoint. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so yes, like I said earlier, today we're going to talk about the pests and beneficials that can be found in our gardens. And we will talk about like how we can deter the pests and also how we can attract these beneficial bugs in our garden. So the first one I'm going to cover today is our aphids. Aphids can feed on a wide variety of plants. So it's not just, they're not attracted to any specific plant, and you can find them all over your garden, even on your house plants, you can get aphids. They're going to be these really small, pear-shaped, soft-bodied insects. Sometimes they can be hard to see, but as you can see in this picture, they like to, be grouped and clustered together. And they can be different colors like green, white, yellow, and black. And they also feed on all parts of the plant. So they can affect the stems, the leaves, the roots, the fruits, the flowers. So what you will want to look for if you suspect that you may have an aphid infestation is you might notice some misshapen leaves, maybe some yellowing leaves, or plants that just aren't fully developing correctly, like they might be stunted in their growth. They also leave behind this sticky residue that's known as honeydew, and that can attract ants. So if you notice, maybe there's like a trail of ants leading up to a plant, that might be a clue to an aphid infestation. And you also may notice that some flowers or fruits can also be deformed. So some solutions to an aphid problem, you can just spray them down with cold water. It'll need to have some pressure to it to knock off the bugs. You can also spray neem oil as a preventative measure. It won't kill the aphids, but it can prevent more from coming onto your plants. You can also do a water and Castile soap solution. You'll do like a quart of water and a tablespoon of some Castile soap or dish soap. And I have heard of people also adding like a little bit of cayenne pepper to that as well. And then you can spray that solution on your plants. Ladybugs are, they actually feed on aphids, as you can see in this picture. We don't imagine ladybugs being these vicious little creatures, but they do help to control aphid populations. And other insects as well as lacewings and parasitic wasps. And you can also do companion planting. So catnip, garlic, and chives, they don't really like those strong smells. So if there's a plant that you know that the aphids typically go after, you can plant these companion plants beside them to kind of deter them from feeding on your plants. Tomato hornworms. Anybody that's tried to grow tomatoes has probably encountered these large, cute little caterpillars. I'll never forget when the first time I tried to grow tomatoes at my home garden, and I was so excited because they had finally fruited and they were getting nice and big. And I remember like looking at them and admiring them one day. And then I think maybe the next day or like 2 days later, I'm like, okay, let me go check on my tomatoes and see if some are ready for harvest. And I walk outside and my tomato plants were completely destroyed. They were stripped clean of everything. And I walk over and sure enough, there's just a bunch of these fat green worms all over, and I was so devastated. I did not get any tomatoes that year. So yes, they are the bane of tomato growers' existence. And they are the caterpillar of the spotted hawk moth. So you can probably may want to pay attention to that as well. If you see the spotted hawk moth, then you can know that there may be some caterpillars coming soon, like if they have laid eggs. The green color of the caterpillar allows it to camouflage onto the plants, which is how, you know, like in my example, like one day they were flourishing, my tomato plants, and the next day they weren't. So those caterpillars were already on the plant, but they were so well camouflaged that, you know, if you're just walking past, you wouldn't notice it. They do feed primarily on tomatoes, but they can also be found on your peppers, potatoes, and eggplants as well. So what you want to look for is they do tend to feed on the upper parts, on the leaves of the upper parts of plants. And as they get older, the defoliation increases. So more and more leaves will be eaten off of your tomato plant. And they also feed on the fruit. As you can see in this picture, there's some significant damage to the fruit. And if you look closer, you can see where the leaves have been stripped from the tomato plant. So some solutions: check your plants. I neglected to do that. And so in the end, my tomato plants were destroyed. So you want to make sure that you're checking maybe a couple times a week. Just do a thorough check of all your plants. Make sure you're looking at the undersides of the leaves. Look on the stems. And hand picking is really the easiest and most efficient way to manage it. So if you see a little caterpillar, just pick it off. I know a lot of people will drop it in a bucket of like soapy water, because I mean, you don't want to squish it. I guess you could if you're not, you know, squeamish, or if you feel comfortable with that. If you have chickens, you can feed them to your chickens. And ladybugs and green lacewings prey on the eggs and the young caterpillars, as well as the small braconid wasp lay eggs on the caterpillars. So that's what's happening here in this picture. This parasitic wasp has laid eggs into the caterpillar, and when those babies hatch, the caterpillar will be destroyed. All right, next is cabbage worms. I know this is something that we've dealt with a lot at the farm, are the cabbage worms. So they're going to be these small, like velvety inchworm-like caterpillars. So when they move like a little inchworm. And it's the larval form of the cabbage white butterfly. So if you ever see the little white butterflies around your cabbages, as cute and pretty as they are, they can be a pest. And as the name suggests, they do feed on cabbage, as well as other brassicas like broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, your collard greens, mustard greens, turnips, kohlrabi, all that stuff. And they can cause quite significant damage to your plants. So as you can see in this picture, you'll notice like holes going throughout your plant. And if it's left unchecked, they can just completely shred the leaves of your plants. So that's another thing you're going to want to make sure you're checking your plants, especially early on. And here's a picture of the of the cabbage moth. So they're going to be these off-white moths with a black spot on each of their wings. So just make sure you're paying attention to that, especially with these different caterpillars. If you see like moths or butterflies, just knowing what they are can give you a heads up like, oh, I see these cabbage moths. So that probably means that there are going to be cabbage worms somewhere. And again, like your best solution is going to be to hand pick them. So make sure you're checking your plants. And as you see these caterpillars, hand picking them and putting them into that soapy water. You can also protect your plants with row covers, especially early on. You want to protect them and make sure that, you know, you don't give them a chance to be attacked and destroyed. There's also, you know, some more DIY sprays to deter caterpillars. I've seen like a citrus spray where you like grind up like orange peel and the seeds and mix that with water, and you can use that as a solution. I've seen other sprays out of like garlic and horseradish and like all these really pungent smells that can be used as a DIY solution as well. And you can also use the neem oil that I mentioned as like a preventative measure. And we have squash bugs. So squash bugs are often mistaken for stink bugs. They do look very similar. And they're found primarily on squash, but they also like other cucurbits, like cucumbers, melons, pumpkins, etc. And they can oftentimes be found clustered in groups. And so they'll be on the undersides of leaves. And you'll find that that's the case with a lot of these pests, is that they like to be on the undersides of leaves. So just making sure that you're checking, seeing if you see any eggs or any of these pests. And these, the squash bugs will inject a toxin into the plant and they'll suck nutrients out of the plant. And so here's a picture of a squash plant that's been ravaged with squash bugs. And you can look at the leaves and see that they're starting to yellow and brown and wilt. And then look at the picture of the fruit and you see like it's damaged. There's these brown spots and it's just not good looking. And they often go after the young seedlings and the flowering plants, which are the more vulnerable ones. As they get larger and healthier and more hardy, they're a little bit more tolerant, but you still want to make sure we're keeping these pest populations in check. And okay, so you want to look for the nymphs early, and that's, you know, again, early prevention is the best. So trying to check our plants early on and checking them often, because the adult squash bugs are more difficult to remove. You'll also want to remove plant matter so that way the squash bugs can't overwinter. So at the end of the season, just making sure we're cleaning up any debris. And that's not just for squash bugs, that's going to be for a lot of these pests as well. Just make sure we're cleaning up any plant debris that may be lying around, because that gives them a habitat to overwinter. And again, you can use row covers here and do the hand picking as well. So next we'll move on to some of the beneficial bugs that we can find in the garden. So this is the lacewing fly. I mentioned it earlier because they can eat the aphids. So they're going to be light green or brown, and their bodies have these really long, beautiful, lacy, transparent wings. The females can lay 400 eggs, and the larvae eat about 600 aphids in 1 month. And the larvae, they're known as aphid lions because they have like these little little hook mandibles, and they'll just attack, go crazy on some aphids. They also feed on the small cabbage worms and other caterpillars and caterpillar eggs, mealybugs, as well as other other pests. And the adults are also beneficial pollinators. We've talked about pollination before and how important it is. So this is just another great pollinator for the garden. And they also feed on the honeydew from the aphids, which is that sweet, sticky substance that the aphids leave behind. So you can attract lacewings by, I've seen some people mix like a sugar water solution and they spray that on the plants because that increases the honeydew production, which will attract the adult lacewings and then also attract the larva. If you're using row covers, you'll want to remove them at night because that's when the lacewings primarily feed. They don't really come out too much in the daytime. They're more nighttime feeders. So you can remove row covers at night to allow the lacewings to eat some of the aphids. They're also attracted to specific plants. They like flowering plants like angelica, caraway, dill, fennel, cosmos, and crimson clover. Ladybugs. If you can recall the picture of the ladybug eating the aphid, these are going to be great beneficial insects to have in the garden. They're also known as ladybird beetles. There are more than 5,000 species of ladybugs. They come in a wide variety of colors, and the number of spots they have is going to vary as well. They feed on aphids as well as potato beetles, potato beetle larvae, mealybugs, thrips, spider mites, and more. And a single ladybug can eat 5,000 aphids in its lifetime, which is pretty impressive. When you look at a ladybug, you don't think about, it can eat so much, but I thought that was pretty impressive. And you can attract ladybugs to your garden by planting a wide variety of flowering plants. They really like plants with a white or yellow bloom, such as angelica, calendula, yarrow, marigold, cilantro, dill, and cosmos. And there's plenty others that they're attracted to as well. And as you'll notice, a lot of these same ones are the ones that lacewings are attracted to as well. So there's a lot of overlap there. Paper wasps. So I think I've mentioned this before, but when we think of wasps, we think of, these vicious pests, which they can be, but they also have, they have multiple roles to play, and they can be very beneficial to have in our garden. Paper wasps are also known as umbrella wasps. They are often confused with yellow jackets, which are way more aggressive than the paper wasp is. The adults primarily feed on the nectar of plants, and they're pollinators, but they do prey on beetles, grubs, the caterpillar or the cabbage worms, caterpillars, and flies. They usually will feed those to their babies. So the adults mostly feed on nectar, and then they'll hunt these other insects they'll chew it up and then feed it to their young. How to attract? Simply planting local native pollinator friendly plants. Yeah, it's pretty simple. And then last are spiders. Spiders, again, similar to wasps, whenever, a lot of people see a spider, they might freak out or try to kill it. But spiders, typically you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. This is an orb weaver spider, a golden orb weaver. We've had several of these out at the farm. The only time they are really a problem, they can, put their web in an inconvenient location, but even then, it's not really that big of a deal. So yeah, Spiders can help keep pest populations in check. You know, they eat a lot of different insects. They'll eat mosquitoes, they'll eat aphids, June bugs, and you know, they eat other things like ladybugs or flies. They don't really discriminate. You know, if you get caught in the web, then it's gonna eat it. So it does eat some of the beneficial insects as well. But it is a benefit to have spiders in your garden. Um, so just, you know, some general rules of thumb when it comes to pests and beneficials. And, you know, I'm going to say this again and again and again, is planting those local native plant varieties. That's going to help to attract these beneficial insects, which will help keep the pest population down. So yeah, a lot of these themes that we talk about in these workshops are overlapping. So like pollination and planting local plant varieties. Some other rules, you know, that you want to keep in mind is like crop rotation. So not planting the same thing in the same spot every year, because then, you know, bugs are smart. So they'll know like, oh, this is where I need to go for the cabbage every year. She plants the cabbage here. Um, so yeah, rotating your crops is going to be beneficial. Um, Companion planting. So planting, you know, like I mentioned with the aphids, planting the, you know, the things that they're deterred from next to the things that they're generally attracted to. So that way you can help ward them off. So companion planting, pollination, pollinator-friendly plants, planting native plant varieties, and what was the other thing I said? I can't remember. But yeah, all of these things are what's going to help you to create, you know, a harmonious environment. We want to have biodiversity, so not just planting one thing. You want to plant a wide variety of plants. And, you know, it'll just help you to find this balance. And we really want to create an ecosystem in our gardens. One thing that I've noticed at the farm is that we don't have a whole lot of mosquitoes. In certain spots we do, but on the main growing area, we don't really have a lot of mosquitoes. But that's because we have a complete ecosystem in place. So we have we have the spiders that will eat the mosquitoes. We have, you know, we have the dragonflies. We have bees and butterflies, and you know, just a complete system. And we get pest problems sometimes, like we deal with the cabbage worms. I would say that's probably our biggest one. This last year we found a few tomato worms, but not enough to cause any damage. I think I personally have maybe seen like 4 of them. So yeah, we just want to make sure that we are planting in a way that's beneficial for us, but also beneficial for the whole ecosystem that we're trying to create in our gardens. So if you just, you know, kind of keep those things in mind whenever you're planting, then it'll really work out in your favor. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had for today. Of course, there are plenty other pests that I did not cover, and there are plenty of other beneficial bugs that I didn't mention. Other things like worms. Finding worms in the garden, especially down in your soil, is perfect. We love worms in the garden. And yeah, just, you know, if you see a bug, like don't squish it. If you don't know what it is, it could be something very helpful. Don't kill the spiders. Don't use pesticides. That is a very important point that I wanted to make. You can use, you know, if an infestation is really getting out of control, I would go for an organic, more natural pesticide first. Because, you know, as we spray these pesticides, not only do they kill the pests, but they'll kill the beneficials as well. So I encourage you to not use pesticides. And you know, we talked about it when we did the pollination workshop on how pesticides can kill the bee populations and the butterflies. So all of this stuff ties into each other and creates like this full circle. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, just keep doing research. If you find like an insect in your garden, get curious about it. You know, look it up, see if it is doing something beneficial. See if it's a pest and what you can do about it. One thing I didn't mention is a lot of these beneficial insects, like the aphids and the ladybugs, you can actually order those online. I have never done it before, but I know that that is a thing that many farmers and gardeners do. So that's something you can look into. But yeah, just making sure that we're ordering what's local to us. We don't want to bring in any invasive species. But yeah, yeah, if you have any questions, reach out. And I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next month. Bye.
Thank you so much. This has been very informative information.
You're welcome.